How's it going? Welcome back to another video. Today we are working on the Scout. I got a bunch of parts here. I got that 14 bolt in the back. I got my leaf springs and whatnot, and all my tools. So we're gonna go ahead, get this bad Johnny put up on jack stands, and then get the rear end ripped out of this so we can put that 14 bolt in. Before we get started on doing all this work, I want to mention we got a lot of hate comments on the Rubicon video, which, hey, everyone's got a hate and that's okay. A lot of it was talking about how the F-150 isn't built for the Rubicon. So what are we gonna do about that? Well, we're gonna take it back to the Rubicon next summer with all the same parts in there. So we'll see if we make it through or not. But in the meantime, we have this Scout here, and everyone's saying you need to build a real crawler. You need to buy a real trail rig. You need to buy something that's blah, 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 X, Y, Z. So that's what we're doing. We're taking this Scout. We're gonna do 1 tons. We're gonna do MP435, which is a great transmission, Ford 300, which is a great motor. We're gonna do 538s, lockers, 42s. I got some coilovers for the front and a 4-link. I feel like that's a pretty good crawler there. We're gonna do chromoly axle shafts all around, probably Tom Woods or Quigley or something for drive shafts. It'll be a crawler with a roll cage and bucket seats and the whole 9 yards. So follow along, this is gonna be a good one. Alright, so she's all up on jack stands now. Got that rear axle pulled out, as you can see. Straps are all that was holding it in there, so that came out pretty easy. I'm gonna go ahead, pull the leaf springs out, get those shocks off, and then we'll start getting all the frame ready for that rear axle. Alright, we are off to a good start. I got my spring perches all cut off. I got the shocks cut off. So we are open and ready to accept a 14 bolt. Next thing I'm going to do is pull off this spare tire carrier so I can get this cross member out. I'm also going to cut this body right here below the tailgate. And then this whole cross member here is just bolted in. Well, it was bolted in, but it's bolted in top, bottom, and then to the body. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull those bolts out, get this cross member out. I'll be replacing this with a piece of angle iron, and then the bumper is gonna come out off of that. So we're gonna go eat some dinner, and then we're gonna go ahead and do that. Good morning, it's another beautiful day and we are working on the Scout. So I got everything cut up last night. There was that piece of channel that went across the frame rails and then extended out a little bit. I'm just going to replace that with a piece of angle. It's going to be welded to the frame, and then that'll give me my mounting locations for the bed. It extended out here because there's more mounting locations on the outsides for the sides, but I'm going to end up cutting that up and then going flat back, so those are going to get cut out, and then I'll do some bracing and stuff to make those so they're not flopping around too much. But I was going to use quarter inch 4x4 angle for this, but I found this piece of 4x4 angle that's 1/2 inch. I believe it's 1/2 inch. It's either 3/8 or half. It looks like half to me. I found this, and it's actually the perfect width, so I don't need to cut it or anything. Me being lazy, I'm just going to go ahead and throw that in there. It's a little thicker than I would like, but you can't really overbuild anything. At this point, it's kind of just a weight thing on my side, but this thing is so small, I don't think it's gonna, one piece of 1/2 inch angle is gonna really affect it. I have this piece. This is left over from the F-150's rear bumper. It's a little bit, I don't know if it's short or if it's just right, but I'm lazy today, so I'm not gonna cut anything. This, I am gonna 45 the ends on it and then plate it off. That angle iron is going to get welded to the frame, and then this is going to get lifted up, so the bottom of it is flush with the bottom of the frame, and then that's going to get welded on as well. This rear bumper, the reason why we're doing all this right now is this is going to give me my mount for the back of my Chevy 63s. I'm trying to pull all of this as far back as possible, just to either keep the wheelbase roughly the same spot in the rear, or to pull it back ideally. You can see kind of how much bigger these Chevy 63s are than the stock Scout leaf springs, so pulling it back a ways is kind of needed in order to either keep that tire centered or bring it back a little bit. I haven't taken measurements yet from the stock mounting locations to where my new mounting location is going to be, because I technically could compare that to the difference in leaf spring here, but it's all right. I'm sure we will be okay. If my wheelbase is a little bit short, I can always push the front end as far forward as I want, since that's going to be a 4-link with coilovers. So I'm gonna go ahead, get all of this stuff kind of in place and figured out, and then we'll go ahead and start welding some stuff in. All right, so I went ahead and got my angle iron tacked in. It's in there pretty good. There's no welding I have to do on this side for the angle iron to the frame, so I can leave that tacked, and I can go ahead and get my rear bumper section mocked up in there to kind of take a look and see what it's going to look like. All right, so this 3x5 is actually working pretty perfectly. The 3 inch is going to give me perfect clearance to match the bottom of the frame rail and stay below the tailgate. And then the 5 is deep enough to where I can just push out just past the body enough to where there's not a huge overhang, but just enough there so I can, you know, throw some brackets on it, possibly get a foot on it or something. But I like it. I like it. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out, get my ends notched at a 45, get all that stuff plated, then we'll get this tacked in. So we got that bumper tacked on. We got our angle iron tacked on for our body mounts. Now I probably could have cut out the center of that angle iron or something to lose some weight, but honestly I'm not too worried about it. If it becomes an issue, I can always go back and cut stuff. But since this is going to be a mount for my leaf springs, I kind of want to have as much rigidity and strength as possible in that section. So I'm just going to leave this for now. We're going to add gussets going in the future. I'm just trying to get everything tacked into place, but my plan is to throw some gussets off the bumper here onto the frame on both sides, inside and outside the frame, both driver and passenger, to help with that strength as well. And then we'll see if we have any issues with rolling. Not much I can really do there. I'm hoping that angle iron is going to help it prevent from rolling, but we will kind of see what happens. So there's that. I'm going to go ahead and get my measurements taken to start getting the rear leaf spring mounts welded on. Rear leaf spring mounts are on. I went ahead and marked each side of the frame rail and then a center line, and then I centered up the hanger on the center line, where I just measured 1/2 inch off each side, because those are about 2 inches wide and the frame is about 3, so it gave me about 1/2 inch on each side. Got it tacked in, measured off the frame to make sure they're both the same same distance back. So it's about 15/16 from the frame to the start of that hanger on both sides. And then we are about 8 inches back from the original mounting location of the leaf spring. So if we wanted to get really fancy with it, we could measure or put our center points on there and measure back to the eyelet and see if we're going to be moving back at all or if it's just going to be in the same spot. But I'm not too worried about it, so I'm going to go ahead and mount up the rear hangers and start figuring out where the front's going to go. Alright, so I got the front leaf spring perches in. Pretty much what I did, there's not really a good way to do this. You can't really just measure eye to eye and say I want that to be X, just because it's really dependent on the weight of the vehicle and then where you have a good mounting location, how high you want to sit, a bunch of variables there. So what I ended up doing is putting a plumb bob on the bump stop to kind of give me a somewhat of a reference point. Obviously I wanted to move it back a little bit with how big these leaf springs are. It didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. Once I put some weight on it, it's gonna move back a little bit more just because that hanger is gonna push back. So right now it's a little bit behind where it was originally, and it'll keep going as we go through the suspension cycle. So what I ended up doing is I put my mount on the spring and I put it up just to hold it on the jack, and then I kind of watched my angle back here, found a pretty decent spot. You got to remember there's no weight on these leaf springs. Once you put the axle on there, it's going to pull the leaf spring down more, so you want to exaggerate this angle a little bit, because once that weight's on there, this isn't going to be the same angle. It's going to be closer to flat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put a bar between the two leaf springs on jack stands, and then I'm going to lower the rear of the vehicle so that all the weight is on these leaf springs, and then I'm going to see where my shackles are at. If I'm at a good angle that I'm happy with, then we're going to leave it here. If I need to adjust it, I can cut my tacks on the front mounts and move them forward or backwards to get that shackle angle in the right spot. I do have to keep in mind that I have to add fuel, fuel tank, roll cage. There's still weight that's going to be added to this. So if the shackle angle isn't exactly where I want it, that weight is going to make it a little more extreme. All right, so I got a bar through the middle with the jack on it. I have all the weight on those rear springs, and you can see my shackles are at about a 53-degree angle off of the bumper. So honestly, I'm not sure if that's enough or if it's too much. I'm gonna leave it. Everything is just tacked for now. I'm just gonna move on to getting my axle in there, and then that'll tell me more. Basically, there's no Bible, there's no perfect way to do this. I'm sure if you asked a bunch of different people, someone would tell you there's a specific way to do it, but everyone has an opinion on things. I'm just gonna figure it out as I go. Basically, all my adjustments I'm gonna be making are gonna be done with the front mounts. So I'm not gonna fully weld everything yet, but there are a couple pieces like that angle iron and the bumper that I'll probably end up welding, just so those don't break off. But for now, I'm gonna start getting the axle, or sorry, the truss cut on the axle so I can drop the leaf springs in there. And then I have perches that are gonna go as well. I'll get all that clamped together, but I'm not gonna get anything welded on that just because I need to set my pinion angle still, and that's gonna be dependent on my drivetrain, which I don't have in here yet. So go ahead and start getting that cut up. All right, so my leaf springs are about 32 inches center to center. So I went ahead and marked my truss on both sides for 16 inches from center, which would give me 32 inches center to center. So I'm gonna go ahead, get the plasma torch, start cutting this out, getting it cleaned up so I can put my perches in there, and then make sure I have clearance for the top plates and everything. So I just got all these clearanced. Looks pretty good. Now what I'm gonna do is use the tractor, lower the axle down, and I'm just gonna slide it underneath the leaf springs. I'm probably gonna have to get out and wiggle it around to get it centered on there. But that's how I'm gonna do that. And then I can get the bolts out, or the U-bolts out, and start getting it ready for that. All right, so I got the axle under here just to kind of see what I need a clearance. I knew I was under clearance for these top plates and for the U-bolts. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this here, and then I'm gonna take a marker and just draw a line across here. Looks like this one will be fine. I don't need to clearance this at all, but I do need to clearance this top one. So I'm gonna draw a marker, draw a line across the top, and then I'll go in there with the plasma torch and cut it down, and then I'll make sure and then I'll keep trimming it down until I can get this in place. I also need to notch out these sides a little bit just so I can get the U-bolts up and in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark it up and get those notched out. All right, so I got this cleared out for our plate, these cleared out for the U-bolts on both sides. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in. All right, so the axle is in, and I think it's a little bit too tall. So it's about up to my shoulder height. 16 inches off the ground there, so assume it's a 32 and it's at shoulder height. So that is too tall. So what I'm gonna end up doing is moving the front spring hanger back. That's gonna make my shackles flatten out some more, which would inherently lower it a little bit. That's pretty much all I can do, unless I went to spring under, which I don't really want to do that because then my U-bolts are going to be hanging down. So for now, I'm just going to button this up, get it to where nothing's going to break off or anything. It can sit like this and I can move it behind the shop, just because we're running out of time today. But it's in there, the 14 bolts in there, a lot wider than the other axles that were in there. So personally, I'm a fan of big axles and small bodies. So we will have to see how it is, but I'm excited. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I have that Dana 60 for the front, but that's going to be 4-link, so that'll be a video for another day. But for now, just going to go ahead and get this thing buttoned up, and we'll catch you on the next one.